Sebastian, your 6306 is here. Um, as I've said numerous times in our correspondence, when I talk about watches, I tend to be, I want to just be factual. So I try not to sugarcoat things because it doesn't occur to me to sugarcoat things. I talk about the honest condition of the watches and what they are. So it's not something, sometimes I make these videos, and if I have less than excellent news to give, it might bother people if they think that I'm being mean. But I swear to you, I'm not being mean. So, with that in mind, and I'm sure I've raised your blood pressure, I apologize. Let's talk about your watch. I'm going to preface this by talking about what a Philippines rework is. There are typical things I'm going to see with a Philippines rework. Typically what will happen is down in the Philippines you'll have these watches, and they were sold originally, and they live in a hot, wet, hard environment in that part of the world, and they tend to be horribly beaten, and they get a lot of moisture in them, and then when they have finally given up the ghost, they sit in a drawer or a box somewhere, and then at some point down the line these watches became worth some money, and so they would be sort of dug up and more or less restored to the point that they are saleable. They don't cost anything in the Philippines, or they didn't a few years ago, and you have these little sort of booths on the side of the street where people repair these things, like literally a table on the side of the street. I've seen photographs, I've had descriptions told to me about this, and so the watches are banged together with just enough skill to make them run so that they're saleable, to be more or less pretty, and to bring in money, and then they're sold off, and that's the end of it. But they aren't really functionally restored at all. That's what this is. There are a few things that I'm going to see that I always see with Philippines reworks. The cases will typically be refinished. The movements either are not serviced at all, or if they are serviced, they're serviced really badly, with repairs made just enough to make the watch so that it runs. I'll see things like wrong screws used, or the mainspring barrels filled with oil, or junk like that. And I'm seeing some of that here. This movement is entirely, the case, by the way, is completely refinished. It's totally repolished. A lot of the case lines are missing. But then you open up the back, and I can see corrosion on the winding weight, and the movement itself is filthy. There's little hairs and fibers everywhere. There's absolutely no lubrication anywhere in it. They took an unrestored movement they found somewhere, and they dropped it into this watch. It is a 6306 movement, but they didn't even bother servicing it, which is amazing. And if you look at how it's running, look at this mess. Yeah, it looks like the Milky Way. It looks like looking up at Starry Night. It's terrible amounts of beat error. They didn't even adjust it. It's not even serviced. I can't say for sure how it will behave when it is actually serviced. It looks okay, but I can tell you that the movement looks rough, and it's probably going to be rough. So that's one thing to think about. So we've already got a mismatch between the case condition, which has been refinished, and the true condition as indicated by the movement. So let's move on to the next thing. Hang on. Often, when I see Philippines reworks, they're going to do things, like I said, these weird repairs that are just good enough to make the lie a little stronger. It's not skilled work, but sometimes their fakery can be quite skilled. This is an aftermarket insert that was manually aged. There's all these scrape marks across it like this. Manual aged to make it look older. So it's an aftermarket insert aged to make it look like it's real. The hands, this is the craziest thing in the world. Somebody painted the tops of the hands white, probably because the metal was all corroded. So they reloomed the hands after doing a really poor job painting the hands. This handset is garbage. Here's the craziest thing. They also painted over the loom here on this dial, but even that's not the craziest thing. Hang on a second. The dial has been reprinted. Can you see how weird and blobby these letters are here? And like under magnification, this 6306, this line of text right here, is like weird and blobby, like it's been reprinted. The font here is all wrong. I think the true markings might be like underneath these markings here, which then they're very, very, very faded. I have a feeling this dial was really badly water damaged and sun damaged, and it was. But realizing this was a valuable watch, they went and they did this crazy quote-unquote restoration job. I mean, it might not even be a 6306 dial. I mean, I wouldn't know until I took it apart if I could see the date on the back side of the dial to see if the date matches the case date. That would be a really good indicator. But it's going to need work, but some of the stuff I can't bring back. Like the dial is the dial, and the dial is pretty heavily worked out. It's been, again, the text has been reprinted. This isn't loom, this is paint. Somebody sort of daubed paint on here, the same paint that was on these hands. The handset is junk. The insert is faked to make it look older. The case is completely refinished. So it's going to be up to you whether you want to invest more money in this. I don't know that I would be able to pick this up. Certainly not for the price that you were talking about, because it's just not worth it. I mean, yes, it's a 6306, but honestly, this watch is worth more in pieces than it is together. If the dial was saleable, like if that was original loom and it was just a worn dial, that's one thing, that's fine. But the fact that the loom isn't loom, it's paint, that's a problem. The fact that the dial has been reprinted, this text is all weird and blobby, it's disastrous. I mean, one could do it. One could clean it up and make it look better and put an original insert in the rotating ring, but it's never ever going to be what it was originally. So, and again, I'm terribly sorry for delivering bad news. And we can certainly talk more about what you want to do or what you think is right. If this were my watch, me personally, I would put it on eBay and I would disclose all the things that I just told you. You know, say exactly what it is, that it's a reworked watch with a painted dial that might potentially be reprinted. It's a genuine 6306 movement that needs to be serviced with an aftermarket insert, and just let the chips fall where they may. I mean, other than that, you could have me service it, and it would certainly run better, but it's a matter of whether or not you want to look at the hands and the dial the way this is. You know, it's tough because these are so rare and they're so hard to see. They don't come around very often. I've owned two, and I sold them both like an idiot because, even just a few years ago they weren't worth that much. They're worth a lot more now. But this one's rough, and it's a matter of you deciding what you want to do with it. And again, I'm so sorry for delivering bad news. You tell me what you want done. I told you that I would ship it back to you if you didn't want anything happen with it, and that's perfectly fine, and I'm happy to honor that. If you have another idea, you can talk to me about that too. Okay, thank you so much.